And so I think if you shift into that mindset as an MSP that like all I need is 10 clients to have unlimited growth, if I showed up and I took care of these clients as if they were going to turn into another one, like what would have to be true for this one client to turn into another? How do I grow through referrals and word of mouth? You know, it's all, you're going to find that a lot of that leads back to the team you're hiring.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of MSP Mindset. I'm really excited to be talking to Johnny Page. He is currently the Chief Revenue Officer for SaaS Academy, which is the #1 business-to-business coaching program for SaaS businesses in the world. So why the heck am I talking to Johnny about the SaaS expert about MSPs? And it's because of the parallels. So Johnny, I think one of the interesting parts about Johnny is that he was a client of SaaS Academy. He built a company called SilverTrack. And here's the other thing that I think is pretty cool. He was a commission-only sales rep, right? So he worked his way up from that to CEO, from less than 400K in revenue to 3 million. And so to go from, commission-only sales rep, which we all know is kind of the low man on the totem pole, and at least maybe one of the hardest jobs there is to do is call and get hung up on, and to 3 million. So really cool. And, was a client of SaaS Academy and now has joined SaaS Academy and has the newly minted host of SaaS Academy podcast. So Johnny, welcome to MSP Mindset. Thanks for joining me.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Damien. It's good to be here, man. I'm excited to chat through it. And you reminded me the straight commission sales rep. You're right. It took me back to 2013 of the grind. I remember those first couple of months. They were grind. But yeah, man, good to be here. Excited to chat.
Yeah. Yeah. For anybody listening, like when I used to interview folks to, come on and make cold calls, we talked about, you got to make this number. And, people want to put on a good brave face. And I'm like, all right, you got to make cold calls. Can you do that? I love cold calls. I'm like, no, you don't. I'm like, nobody loves cold calls. Like you just have to do them. So I can very much relate. I wanted to get right into where to me this is pretty interesting, which is, so you ended up being CEO and building this company, SilverTrack. How'd you go from commission-only sales rep to CEO? Let's start with that.
Yeah. Cool. So I was straight commission, and you're responsible. The way that it's important to know how my comp plan was engineered, because it makes sense, the next couple of steps. So I was responsible for selling, training, and retaining the clients that I had. So I essentially was a reseller. It's easier to think about, straight commission sales rep. You could default to thinking you're just going to get the business and someone's on the back end to retain it. Mm-hmm. I was selling month-to-month software. For $300 a month was the entry-level package. I got 30% of everything that got billed that month. So I could, I was not only doing straight commission sales, but as soon as I sold the account, I had to go and train that customer and keep them. And so I very quickly started saying, all right, I've got to not only care about getting this customer in the door, but I got to get some leverage, because every time I sold, so the first couple of months, it was very difficult to get any clients. I mean, there's barely a website. I had some experience in the security industry. We sold to physical security guarding companies. So typically did, guards on site at hospitals, schools, homeowners associations. We did some mobile patrol. So my grandparents owned a company for many years, and I had got some experience there. I knew what it was like, what the target market, their biggest pains and problems were. I knew what they talked about, around the dinner table.
That's so helpful.
And yeah, it was incredibly helpful. In fact, that's like the hack of my career. I was a client first. So I used SilverTrack to explode my grandparents' security company to the point where they were like, hey, this is a little more of a lifestyle business than it is a high growth company. They've been doing it for 40 some years. That was my first job. Like, we were at different stages. So I went over and I started working with SilverTrack, and I knew how impactful this could be for security companies. But man, this was early in SaaS in general. I mean, data and cell phones cost a lot to put on a guard site. It was like actually impacted their margins to the point where they were like, yeah, we're, not sure, only for a few of our contracts would we consider putting this out there. So I remember the first 6 months were a grind. There was 1 month where I sold 4 accounts, and I had to onboard 4 at the same time that I was trying to sell new accounts. And so then I started to have these peaks and valleys. I'd sell several accounts, and then I'd spend a whole bunch of time, setting them up and servicing them. So then my pipeline would all dry up, and then I'd be like, all right, the 4 that I sold are on board. They're stable now. And now I've got to go kind of start back over and get the pipeline going. So I pretty quickly recognized that the game that I was playing was not necessarily implementing SilverTrack for software companies. It was building the system that would allow me to increase the throughput. So if 4 broke my ability to both sell and service, I needed better systems in place. So I said, okay, how can I get some leverage and make it less painful to onboard a customer? And I developed a help center. So I created all of these, videos and tutorials and templates that would help me take the time it took me to implement a client from, let's just call it, 10 to 20 hours per client down to, 2 to 3 hours, and, got some time back there and figured out a way to spend more of that on acquiring customers. And they did the same thing on that side. I said, hey, you know what? It's one thing to go, cold call and find one at a time. But I remember I heard this podcast or you saw a YouTube video from Infusionsoft that said, hey, marketing is like, you can wake up every day as a caveman and walk out into the prairie and go hunt and kill the one that you need, bring it back to the cave and eat for a day. Or you could, post by post, build a fence around the prairie, and then you get to eat whatever you want, whenever you want. And I was like, ooh, I like that idea. So I'm going to I'm going to figure out a way to, month over month, how can I build the marketing systems to attract more customers in the world, so it takes me less time to acquire. So, man, that was it. I think I just started doing that. I had permission. Nothing really existed at the company. Again, it was kind of like a reseller agreement. And for 2.5 years, I built up a book of business of about 150 or so accounts. And that ended up being much larger than the company had in general. So when we had a conversation to say like, hey, why don't, instead of this being, you being a contractor and keeping this separate, why don't we bring it all together? I was the first employee of the company aside from the 3 founders, and we kept on building from there.
That's really cool. Yeah. I can, by the way, totally relate. And I'm sure if MSP is listening, raise your hand, turn yourself in as you're, thinking about yourself, right? It's the sales and the service, right? As an MSP, every time you make a sale, it's very, while we've got all these cool tools, it's still, onboarding is still a process. But not only that, just the more deals you win, the more people you have to have. And that's directly correlated. It's not high leverage like software. It is, if you double your MSP business, you're roughly doubling headcount. And so, there's always this struggle between service delivery and sales. Very much relate that. So what did you run into that made you say, I'm going to book a call with SaaS Academy? What were you struggling with at that time?
Man, I had been, well, it was a couple of things. So I had been consuming a lot of the content marketing, right? So Dan Martell was routinely publishing YouTube videos. So I was learning a lot from the content he was sharing. And again, I started to realize that the game we were playing was not necessarily the technical side of helping security companies operate better, but it was company building. Like that was what my role was morphing more and more into. I knew a ton of how to help a security company, but there was only so many hours in a day. So I needed to figure out how can I take what we know. And I had one of the founders, his name was Chris Anderson, was just an absolute genius in the security space. And so it was like the problem I was trying to figure out is how do we take all of his experience and expertise and expand it as much as possible, have it far reaching, and it's not exchanging hour for hour. So certainly the software helped for some of that, but I was just looking to get into a room full of people that had done the thing that we were doing before. So I think, Dan used to create a YouTube video every Monday and then send out an email and said, hey, there's 3 ways that I can help. And the 3 ways were, publish a video every Monday. I've got a free Facebook group, and then I do coaching. And if you're interested in coaching, let's have a chat. So I remember exactly where I was when I had the sales conversation with him. It was short, 15-minute conversation. He starts it off by saying, hey, I can't help everyone. If at any point in the conversation I find out that I can't help you, we'll stop the conversation. I'll give you your time back. If I can help you, I'll tell you at the end of the call what that looks like. And had a call with him. It's just clear that like he had been there and done that, and I saw the value in having done that before. This is about 5 years into building. So it started in 2013. This is in 2017 that I'm having that initial conversation with Dan. And through that, there was lots of pain in trying to grow the company there. Like I had made very unsuccessful hires, had very unsuccessful, stints with agencies in every area of the business, whether it was like marketing, outsourced sales, you name it. Like we had just kind of been on this, like the only work that really produced lasting fruit was the work that we were doing. Everything else was kind of a lesson in how not to do it. There was, some, it wasn't all a loss, but I call it like you were building founder IQ, not business ROI. Like we were learning some great lessons, but just still hadn't had any progress. So when I talked to Dan, I was like clear that he had been there and done that, and the value of being in a room full of people that were all in a similar, the majority of my network was all security companies. I need to be around people who are building SaaS companies. And it's funny, I had I had a pretty constrained budget. We were bootstrap SaaS. And so at the time I was working with a pretty pricey marketing agency. So Dan gets in the call and he tells me, hey, here's how I can help. I think at the time it was going to be like roughly $2,500 a month to work with him, and or $24,000 a year. And so it was about $2,000 a month. And he said, hey, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I need to, I'll try to, get out of the contract with our marketing agency, and, hopefully I'll get the rest of our founders on board. And he said, you said you were going to try and hope, and those are not like a strategy, right? So like, what are you going to do? So I am so thankful for that extra push, because I said, you know what, I'm going to cancel our work with the agency to get the budget, and I'm going to get our founders on board. And, the next day I, pulled out the credit card and started working with Dan and joined SaaS Academy. And man, like I just remember that was I think I signed up in September, and I went to our first event in October. We call them the SaaS Academy Intensives. And I remember walking into that room for the first time. There was probably about 100 founders in that room. And dude, it was the first time I found my tribe. Like I knew there was just there was a knowing inside me. I was like, man, this is the room that I've been looking for a long time. Again, like I loved the process of building companies, and I was in the security industry. I wasn't passionate about security. Like I was at that point kind of tired of, the security game. But I was just getting started on company building. So, got into that room at SaaS Academy. Was the first place that I could truly, talk about the things that were exciting me and worrying me. And I do that around my friends and family, but 2 minutes into the conversation, their eyes glaze over, right? They don't have that familiarity. And I went, first day of the intensive, like I remember we started like 9 a.m. and it was like 9:30 at night that we were talking back-to-back conversations with people who got it, who understood the joy and the struggle of building a SaaS company. And then I was hooked pretty early on.
Yeah. Finding your tribe is huge, right? Really, if you're listening, watching, right, there is a tribe, whatever that tribe is, right? There's tons for MSPs. And the biggest thing is you're not the only one going through this, right? I often think, man, I'm the only one that's this dumb, that's created this problem, that can't figure out how to hire. Cause you can look at the news and social media, whatever, and say like everybody's winning. And I'm the only one that's not. So, but find your tribe, get out there. What I love about this story is, the spoiler, as I introed you, is you now have joined SaaS Academy. So you obviously understood it, but what was the first thing? Cause I know just going back to what you said, what I love is, the first two things you said were try and hope, and those are not actions. So I love how it started there. What do you recall making a change in mindset or a change in action? What was one of the first things you changed?
In the business after joining SaaS Academy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really interesting. A lot of what we do at SaaS Academy is we take these things that you're feeling in the business, and you create a framework. You kind of put labels and structure to the problem, and it becomes much easier to solve when you've defined it. Like I just recently made a post on Instagram that talked about a problem well defined as a problem half solved. And a lot of what we do at SaaS Academy is just defining the problem. So I remember, one of the first things that we learned was this strategy called the Rocket Demo Builder. And it was a better way to structure your demos. Instead of giving someone a product tour, you would do a discovery to find out what are their pains and opportunities, and you would customize the demo. You would demonstrate the solution to their problem. And that, like, you felt that before. You felt, you've been in a demo. Like I had been in a demo, hundreds of times before, where I felt like I was boring someone by like showing them feature after feature. And then that little shift, demo conversions go way up. Another one we did was this, we called it the reactivation emailer. So at the time in 2017, we had already done 100 podcast episodes. Like my main marketing strategy was content marketing. We said, hey, we're going to serve the market. So from like 2013 to 2017, we had been publishing content, producing webinars, producing podcasts. Like we had helped so many security companies that never even used our product. Like marketing was a strong suit for us. And so Dan was like, hey, if you've been pumping equity into the market, you can send a 9-word email that just says, hey, are you in the market for blank, insert your product or service? And man, in a single day, we had 100 conversations with people that were on our list, and they weren't in market at the time that they joined, but us just simply making the ask to say, hey, is this a priority for you, or are you still in market for X? Flooded the pipeline full of deals. So it was just lots of things in that, those are some great sales examples. There's a ton around, I remember a training we have called the high octane team technique, and it talked about how to attract high performers and how to enable high performers to own their area of the business and get great results. And the list goes on. It was for 2.5 years, I kept building SaaS Academy, and traction really picked up. Kept building SilverTrack, and traction really picked up to the point where the beginning of 2019, we felt like the market was consolidating. There was tons of investments coming into the space, and felt like it was time to consider exiting the company. And if we hadn't been a part of SaaS Academy, we're in a room full of people who have had hundreds of exits before. And so like, this is the first time you're talking about making a life-changing decision. And we're talking private equity companies that do hundreds of deals a year. And this is maybe the one we'll ever do in our life, let alone the first one we've ever done.
Right.
And so just the value of the conversations leading up to that, negotiating through the, getting to the letter of intent and going through due diligence. Tons of value in having that network and that community through those stages.
So take me back to, you signed up, right? So to me, part of the action is commitment. Part of it is you paid, right? You've parted with money. That probably means you're going to show up. And so what changed in you to say, I'm going to do things differently? I don't know how to do, and what I'm doing isn't working. What shifted your mindset and your, just from a personal level?
It's a great question, man. Honestly, I think that it was learning. The shift was that, hard work was never in question. Like I was waking up every day and grinding, but I was learning a lot of lessons that other people had already learned before. And so the thing that joining SaaS Academy taught me, it was the first of many investments I'd make like that, between, now and then. It's a routine part of how I solve problems now, but it was the first time that I said, who do I know that has done this before? And can I go get in that room? So it's like, you think about, I would have probably gotten there 5 or 6 years later, just trying one thing after the next. Like I was getting better at hiring. I remember, the high octane team technique helped tremendously, but in the early days of SilverTrack, I remember I made several failed hires. And one day I was like, you know what? Because everyone made sense on paper. Like their resumes were great.
Yeah.
And so I'd hire them and they wouldn't get the business result. And I'm like, man, what am I doing wrong? So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write down the things that I value. Like, what are the intangibles? And I remember sitting in my first interview where I had these 5 things written down on a yellow piece of paper. I can see it like it was yesterday. And I just asked questions that would tell me if they had that thing or not. And I started hiring on my values, and I carrying, there was some prerequisite of their experience that got them into the interview, but it wasn't about the skills, it was about the values. And then my hiring started to really kick off. So I would have probably figured it out over time, but joining SaaS Academy was like pulling an outcome forward. It was like, how can I do this, in half the time? So I don't know, in terms of the mindset that shifted, we say all the time, like the transformation happens at the transaction. When you have to go pay, make a commitment for $24,000, there's a way I was showing up in that room that was going to go get, 10 times that ROI because I took the risk. I said, hey, let me fire the marketing agency. We're going to be better off if we do that. I put my relationship equity and trust with my other founders on the line, and there was no way that I was going to let that fail. But
that was kind
I don't know. That answer your question.
It was kind of the burn your ships moment, right?
Yeah,
no turning back.
Yeah, 100%. It is. That's part of what I heard someone tell a story one time. They're talking to a friend who'd been working with a personal trainer, and they're like, you know what? They're not getting the results that I expected. And the response was, you're not paying enough. And they said, what do you mean? Well, if you were paying more, if it hurt more to have hired the personal trainer but not be getting the result, you would be getting the result. So you're just not leveraged enough. So it's like, there's a lot of ways that we can create leverage. One of them is you just pay a high price tag. So sometimes if coaching isn't effective, it's like, well, we're probably not paying enough for it because the transformation happens at the transaction. You need that mindset shift to say, I'm going to become the person that I want to become by hiring this coach. The coach is an enablement tool, but like I have got to make the decision that I'm down for that transformation. And so I think at the transaction, I knew like, hey, okay, I'm going to become a successful SaaS founder. Like that's what CEO at the time. Like that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this journey. And as soon as the credit card is swiped and I'm walking into the room for that first event, like the decision was already made.
Right. I love that. Right, the change in mindset that I'm going to, and sure, the coaching enables you to pull it forward, which is huge, right? If you don't know what to do, then you're stuck. But also, if you didn't change your mindset, and also, I love what you shared, like, I am going to, right? I'm going to be a successful SaaS CEO. And that, that changes your mindset. It's not, I'm going to try, or I'm going to hope to, or I'm going to do this or that. It is, it's kind of pulling your future self in, just like you're pulling the future of your business in. Have you ever wondered if you could recover your backups? Let me ask a better question. Have you ever had a backup fail to recover? Have you ever lost data? Yeah, that's me. Here's what's crazy. 58% of recoveries fail to recover. So if you think it's just you couldn't be more wrong. What are we going to do about that? Well, you've got two options. Enter Servosity. What we do and what we exist to do is test your backups and manage them for you. We test every volume, every single day. We do weekly testing, monthly testing, and quarterly testing. And you can hand off the drudgery and babysitting of backups and the day-to-day management to our team that monitors your backups for you. It's time to level up your backup game. One way you can do that is visit servosity.com/learn more. If you'd like to take the process that I've spent the last 18 years building and steal it and apply it to your MSP so that you can level up your backup game, check out the link below in the description or visit servosity.com/learn more.
I'll say one other thing that the mindset shifted was there were lots of big public companies, SaaS companies out there that I could look to and admire, but I always felt like there was something different about them than me, right? And when I went into the room at SaaS Academy and got involved in that community, you start to see people who are just like you who are getting better results. And it just kind of creates a hunger there. So one, belief goes up. You're in a room where there's a couple people ahead of you. And what the other thing it did for me was realize I knew a lot more than I thought I did. Like, it helped with self-confidence because I went to an event. I remember the first time, again, that first day I'm sitting at a table and I feel like an imposter. Like, I'm like, dude, I'm not like these people. And then we go to our first like breakout session and kind of exchanging conversations. And I realized, someone asked a question. I'm like, oh man, like here's what I did for that. And it's something completely normal to me. And they're like, oh, wow, that's super helpful. Right. And so your confidence starts to build, but then you also like see others in the room who are, a couple, they've got a dozen more team members on, they're a couple more, a couple million ahead of where you are. And it's a motivation and a driver to be like, oh, that guy's just like I am. Like, he's in the same room that I am. Like, there's no reason why I can't achieve those same results. It's hard to look up to a Mark Benioff who started Salesforce. And,
Right.
you can learn some things from them. But, when I was running a, $1 million SaaS company, I felt like there was a pretty big difference. But then I get to a room where there's someone doing like 4 or 5 million. All right, now I can, I can see the path there. Like, and I can actually sit down to them, talk to them about it and, model what they've done.
Yeah. Lot more in common than a $3 billion or whatever it was at the time, and much larger now. Well, what was scarier, making the commitment, knowing you had to sell your partners, and fire this marketing agency or get out of a contract, or going to that first event and feeling like an imposter?
I would say it's probably going to the first event because Dan's confidence on the sales call was pretty high. Like, he often says like sales is a transfer of enthusiasm. And I left that first call being like, oh, like this is for sure going to work out. It was certainly instilling a lot more enthusiasm and belief than my work with the marketing agency was. So that was because we had been going sideways, and Dan was just like, he was able to call out the pain. He's like, I bet you tried this, this, and this. And when you do that, here's the things that are happening. Like, there was a real, I guess, assuredness that he had been there and done that, and that there, many others in the program that had as well. So that was less of a risk. But man, I remember, the first event was in San Francisco. I live in San Luis Obispo, which is about 3 hours south. And the drive up, I just remember like, the anxiety just kind of like going higher and higher. Cause you just don't feel like you belong in that room. But it quickly went away. I was about like an hour and a half, 2 hours in, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this, I was a kid in a candy shop.
Yeah. 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 I just, I know from my experience joining, the SaaS Academy, and other, when you're out of your comfort zone, when you have that pit of the stomach feeling, you're about to grow. Right.
Yeah.
And pain and growth are sometimes a little more associated than I would care for. But I definitely relate to the imposter feeling. And I love what you said, because I think that sometimes gets missed because you make the commitment and then I think it's easy to go, okay, I just lacked some knowledge and a coach gave me some knowledge and that's it. But that commitment, that shift in mindset, and the belief that I'm going to become that successful, in your case, SaaS CEO, is all the difference in the world. Because yes, there's upskilling and those sort of things, but that commitment is just wonderful. And lastly, just kind of on the topic of gaining, I think sometimes when you switch, you leave out something that I think was important, which was you showed up and felt like an imposter, but in the same first day, you were kind of like, hey, I know the answer. I can help with that in your group of now peers, some of which are bigger and maybe some of which weren't. But how did that change in confidence impact you?
I'll tell you, there's this, I don't know where this came from. I should probably do some like thinking and reflecting around this. But ever since a young age, I was like very aware of, am I saying no to something, or am I not raising my hand or not volunteering because I'm running from something? Or am I saying no because I'm running towards something? They're very different. When you're running towards something, you say, hey, you know what? No, right now I'm not going to go out and do XYZ. I'm focused on this goal. If you're saying no to avoid fear of embarrassment, looking like whatever it is, like that keeps you quiet, that in that setting, when someone shared the challenge, if I would have not, vocalized, hey, here's my experience on it, it's because I'm trying to protect me, not because I'm focused on the person. Like the best that I can do in that scenario is trust that I'm in that room for a reason. This conversation got brought up for a reason. And the best that I can do is just share my perspective on it. And what they hear and what they take away from it is up to them. But, I think I've always just defaulted to, hey, let me just, be the most helpful that I can be. And I think that when we get stuck, when we're hesitant to share, or we think that we don't have something to share, it's a lot of times because we're like too focused on us and not focused enough on the person, the people in the room. That's, man, I'll tell you that was a big shift for me on the networking side. I know that a lot of the MSPs, you get your business in a local setting. And so I used to when I was selling security, I hated going to like the Chamber of Commerce events and the BNI stuff. Like I was in all the networking groups, and I hated it. I felt so, insecure and out of place. And the biggest shift that happened for me was realizing that that's a pretty universal experience. And the antidote to that is to just focus on other people. Just focus on what can I get? How are they feeling? How are they thinking? What is their struggle? The anxiety in those rooms and insecurity was coming from this hyper focus on me and how I'm feeling, how others are perceiving me. And if I could get, shift that focus to others and making sure that they felt more comfortable, my energy shifted and I started to experience those rooms differently and people experienced me differently. So, I think that's what made me volunteer my point of view on day one in that room was, hey, even though I'm super nervous and I feel like maybe I'm a fish out of water here, like I'm just going to do my best and focus on this person asked a question. I've wrestled with that, challenge before. Let me share what I've done.
I love that. Focus on others, and not just for that, right? Focus on others, right? Is what I want to do. But I also can admit, like I've gone in and been like, hey, I feel like an imposter. The worst thing I could do is open my mouth and let them know I am an imposter, and let them know that like I really, I don't want to be the dumbest guy in the room, and I'm afraid if I open my mouth, I'll confirm that. And which, like you said, is feeling like an imposter. It's inferiority. So focusing on others, and like you said, there's a reason that came up. You happen to know. So I love that, and I think it doesn't matter if you're getting coached or you're just at a BNI or chamber event, right? You can get out of your comfort zone, especially right if we're introverts, right? And we're saying, I'm not this natural extroverted, like it comes in and says all eyes on me type of person.
Yeah.
I think that's really great to it just resonates. If you focus on others, you can make it about helping them and not worry about myself.
100%. I think staying curious is super important. How do I cultivate curiosity? I have a deep belief that there's something in that room for me. And so if the only thing it is to push past the uncomfortability to get into the room, heck yeah. Or if, at another level, it's what am I going to get out of the conversations or who am I going to meet? When I'm going into those settings, I think about there's 3 different outcomes, I guess like targets that I'm looking to get from being in a room like that. Is one, there's like new revenue opportunities in there. That's why we go and we go to these networking events. The second one is there's relationships that will just make the journey more rewarding and more fruitful. Like who can be a lifelong friend? Go into the event expecting that you can meet one person you were friends with for life. And then the third one is I'm looking for other people's perspective on reality. Like what's their view and mindset that is different than mine, and what can I learn from that? So I think all of those things come from staying in a place of curiosity. And when you do that, a lot of those insecurities of, hey, I shouldn't be in this room or I'm not there yet, go away. People love sharing their experience. So if you just go into the room and you stay curious, you can get a really long way, and you might find there's revenue, relationship, and reality opportunities for you to upgrade and become better from, pushing into that uncomfortable zone.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. So I want to go back to something you said earlier, challenge you on this, because I love what are you running from or what are you running toward, which I think is really powerful. And I want to see if you have an example that you could share. This is the time I was in that, and I only realized it because of
What is a good example of this? You know, there's a lot of this around. So I've been focused more around sharing more content on social media and sharing more about what I'm learning and experiencing, and that has confronted a lot of that insecurity because I can go find people who are several steps ahead and know more than I do. So it's like, okay, what am I going to add to the conversation?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an area where I'm saying, hey, okay, why would I, have made a commitment? I want to post once every day when I'm, rolling into a session to shoot some more content. If I'm, on a busy week and I see that little 2-hour block to shoot content, it's easy to want to punt it and have a great reason to, or why. That's running from something. That's saying, hey, it's not pushing into the uncomfortability. So, to your point earlier, pain and growth are very closely associated. It's like recognizing, oh, if I want to continue growing, this feeling of being uncomfortable it will become normal. Like when it's gone, I'm probably not growing. And so I think running, now there's other times where you need to stay disciplined and it's not the season. Like if that wasn't the season, if my focus when I sat down at the beginning of the year or the quarter wasn't on producing more content, then, saying no to the things that, or saying, I guess the vice versa, because that is the focus, I'm saying no to other things, right? I'm saying no to the things that don't help support that goal. And so, I get emails and opportunities all the time to explore, hey, what about, there's distractions everywhere, right? And so it is staying disciplined to be like, no, this is my area of focus right now. So I'm saying no to those other opportunities because they're not the thing that I'm running towards right now. But it's like, it's being very aware of like, what am I running to? And when I'm using no, am I doing it because I'm running towards that thing, or am I doing it because I'm running away from the fear that I know is associated with growth? Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 I have to at least perhaps start with awareness of, am I running from this or am I running toward this?
Yeah.
Because I can completely relate. Earlier on in my business, instead of the couple-hour block of shoot content, like you're saying, I had the couple-hour block of make cold calls, and that sort of thing. And I was like, I'd rather do my taxes or go get a root canal. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like at the beginning, I was like, this, like I could find any reason to punt. And so, yeah, I can very much relate to like, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to do it. But once you get and develop that rhythm, you start to go, okay, if I did that, then the next time it's producing content, now I'm uncomfortable again, but I did that the prior time. So I can, it's still going to be uncomfortable, but I'll survive. I can do this. I've done it before.
Yeah.
Build some momentum or confidence, right?
Totally. An example of how when this happened just this past weekend was I have someone who, most of our work is remote. And I have someone who I'm working more closely with remotely, and they would say, hey, I'm going to be passing through your area. Do you want to meet up for dinner? And my initial reaction, like my reaction all the time to like meeting up in person, the gut reaction is like, no, like, I don't know. I can be a little more on the introverted side. And that's an example of, I know that in this season, I'm focused on expanding my network and expanding the relationships that I have. Like I'm in a season where I'm trying to foster more relationships intentionally. Like that is what I'm focused on. And so I'm like running from something would be saying, no, man, sorry, I can't, I'm busy. Running, towards something is, hey, push into the uncomfortable and say yes to the opportunity.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And I have to say, right, you were this commission-only sales rep, and it's like everybody's by it. When you read it, you're like, man, I don't know how you ever did that. It's hard to maybe even relate to. How'd you go from 300-something thousand in that company to CEO and 3 million plus? But I think, I kind of thought, well, man, he's just that naturally extroverted, guy.
Yeah.
And you're the chief revenue officer for SaaS Academy and, this bigger than life Dan Martell and this sort of thing. So I think it'd be easy for me to say, you must be this just naturally extroverted, like I'd love to. So I appreciate you sharing that. What do you do to, I'm an introvert too. What do you do to push out of that and say, you know what, this is the right thing to do without just saying yes to everything? Because like you said, you still have to say no to a lot, maybe most.
Yeah. There's a couple of things. So one, I would, a couple of things. So one, like know what I'm running towards. A lot of times, man, it is so anxiety producing to not have that defined because you have FOMO of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like you feel like there's no way to win unless you say, what am I saying yes to? There are too many things that are come in. Like you just take 15 minutes and scroll through any social media, you're going to find all these different strategies and hacks and things you could be doing. And you feel like, oh my God, if I don't do that, I'm a failure. Yep, that part of my business is broken. That part's broken. That part's broken. So like saying, what am I focused on right now gives me the permission to be like, not right now, eventually, one day. And I put it in the parking lot and I say, if I'll come back to that when I have this like cadence of annual planning, quarterly planning, weekly review. And so that's the first thing. So defining what I'm running towards. The second thing is you have to intentionally build the muscle of doing something that's uncomfortable. And a domain for me where I routinely build that is in the fitness domain. Like I'm constantly going into a place where I don't want to. Like there's always a mental negotiation. I wake up. If I don't work out in the morning, it's not happening. Mm-hmm. So like, I wake up and there's a negotiation. Oh man, maybe not today. Oh, it's been a hard week, whatever. And it's like, nope, I'm going to go do it. So like you always are, you have to figure out a domain and knowing that our minds are going to keep us where we're at today, keep us safe. And so a part of pushing into being exceptional to growing is going to be warring against that. Now, where can I go train that? Intentionally, where can I train the ability to push into uncomfortable? And just fitness is an amazing proxy to it. It's so wild how frequently I think we can chalk it up to, oh, it's just something like rich or successful people do. They always say that thing, but it's like you can look at whether it's cold plunging, whether it's fitness. They're using it as the gym for training the uncomfortable, warring against the mental chatter in the other areas where they need growth. And so like, man, that's been a huge one for me is just saying, I was just doing it this morning. I remember I'm in the middle of a, 20 kettlebell swings and 11 in, I just want to set it down. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to keep pushing through it. And, when I get to the 20th, I'll be glad that I did. And I'm going to use that muscle later on when I'm talking to Damien or later on when I'm, whenever opportunities come where I say, hey, maybe I should shrink back from it. The mental chatter wants to keep me in the comfort zone. It's like, no, let's go push into the, into the uncomfortability because I know there's something for me there. So man, I think that those are the two biggest, there's probably lots to go into it of like, how do I go do the thing that needs to get done? But a lot of it's that vision and being connected with why, and then having an area where you're actually training that muscle of doing the thing that needs to get done, discipline over motivation. Motivation is going to be fleeting, but the discipline of, no, I'm dedicated to being, the best version of myself. And right now that means I'm doing this thing regardless of how I feel.
I love that. Yeah. The last year or so I've been on that journey because I was like, I'll get to it when I get to it. I'll work late. I gotta grow the business. I gotta be there for my wife. I gotta take care of my kids. All important things. And not in that order. And fitness and health were, they're something I put on the back shelf. And for me, it's some of the things that we're doing business. They take a while. And I'm so impatient, you start doing it and you start spinning that flywheel and it's months, sometimes it's only weeks, but often it's months or nearly a year or something before you really start to see the fruit of your effort. And so, it's helped me tremendously to not only be healthier, but, just committing to getting up and exercising and doing it. And sure, I'm in better shape. And that's wonderful, but it's that mental muscle. Yeah. And I just personally will say what I've enjoyed is like that is something I can see a much more immediate. It's not like the first day you swing quick kettlebells, you can see this bicep or something all of a sudden. But it's easier to control if I do that or not. Then the first social media post or two I start making is going to do well when
Yes.
it's a commitment. So I love the fact that that you got to make that a priority.
Dude, it is wild how many times, like if I have a team member that's not really performing well, if we focus on the physical, if we say, hey, what are your daily habits? Are you getting into the gym? It is wild how they show up not only better in the work world, but in every other area. It's because it's building, like discipline is needed to be at our best in every area. Like if you want to be an amazing dad, you want to be an amazing husband, you want to be an amazing business leader, like you are going to need discipline. You are not always going to feel like it. The number of times that I've like exhausted all the energy, I work upstairs, I walk downstairs and I'm at 0, but I want to be a 10 out of 10 dad. And I got another 4 or 5 hours. My kids are awake. And like, this is the first time we had a chance to engage. Like motivation is not always going to be there. And so like, where else, what other tool do you have there? I'm sure there are other ones, but man, it's universally effective. If you'll go develop it, you're not just training your body in the gym, you're training your mind. And I love the physical domain because it's so controllable, right? Like it teaches delayed gratification. It's funny, like as a parent too, you can see that in your kids. You're like, okay, how could I make sure that my kids have the most choice in life? If my job as a parent is to just open as many doors for them as possible, well, like one of the things I need to teach them is delayed gratification. How do you like work for something over a long period of time?
That's right.
To achieve it. And so it's like, all right, well, what domain would I train that in? And, of course, how do I train that in me?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the physical is so important.
Yeah, for sure. So, you have 2 kids, I believe. How old are they?
3.
Right
I
now?
got
3
Abby
kids.
is 8, Sawyer is 5, and Summit is 5 months.
Wow. Yeah. It sounds like you have a lot going on. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I have 3 kids as well. I can totally relate to, I want to show up and be the dad that doesn't finish the day and then sit on the couch the rest of the day,
Yeah.
and consider that the end of my day, the end of working hours. That is really cool. I wanted to get to another part because we're talking about challenge. So, you did something that most people never do, which is not only build the business, but exit Silver Track. And you've exited it. And how did you go from that to I'm going to join SaaS Academy?
Yeah, cool. So the exit process was a long and at times very taxing one. It took us 9 months from the time we signed the letter of intent. We were in due diligence for 9 months, and we sold it in November 2019. So if you think about where the world was at in 2019, like very fortunate that we, tied those loose ends off before we went into COVID. Fortunately, security was pretty resilient to that, but to COVID, but it would have been very challenging to go through Silver Track, continuing to operate Silver Track through COVID. So, for the next year and a half, I stayed engaged with SaaS Academy. When we exited, I called Dan and told him and, celebrated. And I was like, hey man, I don't have as much of a use for SaaS Academy on the business front right now, but like, I love this community and I want to stay a part in some capacity. So we figured out a way to, to stay involved, for me to stay in the community. And so I did that for about a year. And then, he called me up and he's like, hey, I'm looking for former founders and successful CEOs that have done the thing before to coach in SaaS Academy. All it looks like is at the time we had kind of a group of experienced founders and CEOs that you could book 30-minute calls with. And so I was like, sure, man, I'm down for that. Like I'd love to, if I can help someone, like I consider it fun. So I did that for a little bit, but I'm an all-in kind of personality. And so I was like, man, I don't just want to like coach on the side. If I'm going to coach, I want to be like, I want to coach. That's all I want to do. I want to focus on showing up. I felt like I was just barely scratching the surface. So that ended up not being it. So anyways, I talked to Dan probably every 2 to 3 months or so. And he'd always just say, hey, how are things going? What's it like? So were acquired by a private equity company, and I became the VP of customer success of the big company. So overnight, we go from 25 employees to 250, and I'm leading the customer success team, about like 50, 55 people in North America for this. The strategy was they bought multiple companies all in the same industry and rolling them all together. So I have like customer success teams supporting multiple different products, and we're figuring out this migration strategy of how to consolidate them all into, to one platform. And at the same time, working through COVID, so we have a reduction in force, and we lay off several people. And I just kind of got pretty tired of how slow things work at a 250 person company. Like, I just wasn't experienced enough to realize, like, not every company can operate like a startup. Now I realize it. It's SaaS Academy. I lead a team of about 50 people, and now I'm aware of the in between. What happens in between 25 and 250, and why do you start moving a little slower and being a little bit more deliberate with what you're doing? But stayed in touch with Dan throughout that process. And one day it was a well-timed phone call, and he's like, "Hey, I need to bring someone on to come run our customer success team. So we've got 3 programs. I need someone to just manage our customer success experience, and I want to know if you're interested." And at the time, that would have to, I had to leave a lot behind, stock in the new company, and it just ended up, like, I took a big risk in doing it. And I remember Dan saying, like, "I'll do my best to mitigate the risk, but you just got to have to trust me that I can make your life a whole lot bigger and, help you achieve a lot more of what you want to achieve on this side. It's not going to be an immediate step forward. It's going to feel like a step back, but trust me." And man, if you think about, you've seen, sort of, Dan's trajectory and the trajectory of SaaS Academy. Like, hadn't even written Buy Back Your Time, and, joined the team in April 2021. And so glad I joined just to run our customer success team. And this theme of like entrepreneurship follows me throughout my whole career. I show up in that room only responsible for customer success, but I realized we have opportunities and issues on our marketing team. And so I start, "Hey, what if we did this? What if we do that? Let me help here." We get to a transition in leadership. He's like, "All right, Johnny, run customer success and run marketing." And then, another couple months go by, sales start, marketing works really well. You break sales, and we're like, "Hey, we need a new sales leader." And so I take over our sales department. So all throughout, I think there's this theme of just saying, "Hey, like, whether it's my responsibility or not, I show up like an owner. Like, I show up like it's my problem, and I'm resourceful and in the business of building the business, not necessarily like staying in my lane and just punching the clock." It's like, I'm interested in the outcome and the mission that we're after here.
So you didn't say these words, but I want to see if this is what happened, because I know as a startup that is growing, it's obvious often I need the person and I'm not quite there yet. I already have the problem, but I'm not where I'm sure the big company, can pay in a whole lot different way than a startup. So often it's like, wouldn't you like to take a step backwards in pay at a essentially smaller, AKA riskier company? Would you like to make less money short term and do more work? So maybe that's not how he put it, but was that essentially kind of what that was from a short-term perspective?
Yeah, basically. I mean, like, he starts off the conversation by being like, "What do you want to be doing in 5 years from now?" And so he's connected with like what I want, what my motivations are. And, I think that that conversation, if I was coaching you on how to have those conversations with other people, I would say, look, there are 2 different roles in the world. In this, all roles fall into 2 categories. You're either a pioneer or you're an operator. Operators want to know the job description. They want to know what 10 out of 10 looks like, and they want to be able to come in and run that play every day, whether you're in sales, marketing, customer success, product. They want stability. They want to know what a good job looks like, and they want to be able to come in and deliver. Pioneers love the ambiguity. They love the building. If they do the same thing for 6 months in a row, they get bored. Like, they want the progression, and I'm a pioneer. If I'm doing the same thing 6 months 6 months from now, I've done it wrong, and I'm probably like back to the drawing board. I might be solving the same problem, but I'm solving it in a whole new way, because I want that progression. And so I've either built myself out of my role and I've got someone else in, or, I've created new problems for the business. If you solve marketing, you create sales problems. If you solve sales problems, you create success problems. So, I typically will find myself, hungering for that progression. And that's what the allure of SaaS Academy was like. I was in a role where I knew it was an operator role. Like when I tried speaking up in executive sessions and saying, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? Like, it was like, no, we stay the course. And it was just progressing so slowly, by my standards. The company's still successful. I did a great job. Like, it just wasn't the right role for me. Again, it was more of an operator role. I like pioneering, and that's what, SaaS Academy and Dan presented the opportunity for. So, I think that's a huge part of hiring, is like putting the label on the bottle. What are we really looking for here? And if you shine that light bright enough, you're right people, you're going to attract the people who are the right fit for that job.
Yeah. I love how you're saying putting the label on the bottle, because I was just thinking like, I know sometimes I used to say, I can't get that person that I really need because they're at the big company and the grass must be greener. I know they can throw money at it. So if they want to outpay, then they could win that if they chose. But I love how, what it made me think is you can get the right person, because if it's the right season and the right fit, then your culture and the trajectory of the company along with the fit can beat, giant companies that move more slowly.
100%. Oh, yeah. Man, there's definitely a profile of a person that wants to be solving the problem at the stage of company that you're at, that they will be super excited for it. So much of work is the way I view compensation is it cannot detract. Like, there can't be such an imbalance that I feel like at the end of the day, I'm overextending myself and that it's not reciprocated. But reciprocation comes in a lot more forms than just compensation. Like, me getting the opportunity to work on a problem that excites me and invigorates me is so incredibly rewarding. Like, think about, like, I want to walk downstairs and be a 10 out of 10 dad. If I'm doing something all day that produces energy and joy and excitement, like, I'm much more likely to do that than to suffer through a job that pays me $75K more a year. And, that I hate the work that I'm doing. I mean, that was the scenario. I was not a great dad when I was like in the operator role. I wasn't a great anything. I was super frustrated. My wife, fortunately, was there and super supportive throughout that season. But there's a lot more than it comes down to compensation. So I think, when we talk about putting a label on the bottle, it's like describing where are we going? Like, what is the impact and the purpose of our company, and what's the role that you're going to play in this if you decide to take this role? So I try to I say start every interview conversation with, this is just as much an interview for you as it is for me. I want you to know exactly what you are getting yourself into if we get to the point in the process where we extend an offer letter. So like any question for you to understand that this to be, not ask them like, what would a 10 out of 10 next role look like for you? And many of our conversations kind of stop right there because it's just this isn't what they're looking for. So always believe there's a person out there perfectly tailor-made for the problem that you're trying to solve right now, the position you're hiring for. And when you find that person, man, the business takes a step forward. Like, every hiring opportunity is an opportunity for your business to take a big step forward. The right person in the right seat makes a world of difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. To me, I've always been one person away from changing the whole trajectory of not only business, but my life, because it impacts how I show up. Like you said, as a dad, how I show up to my wife, how I show up in energy level. You get the person that loves that's so much better at it. That, I want to hit pause on that because I want to come back to that, but I want to ask one thing. I'm sure it was super exciting and flattering. I don't want to put words in your mouth, just to basically have an offer to join SaaS Academy from Dan. But before, I'm going to go back to earlier. We're talking about being an imposter. We're talking about not being enough. I don't know if you'd fixed all that, but did you have any of that when it's like, this is the guy I've been looking up to. This is Dan Martell that's asking me to join him. Am I Am I ready? Am I enough? Did you go through any of that?
Um, a little bit, but it was almost like, dude, I remember, like, go back to that first event. Like when I walked in that room, I'm telling you, like there was a knowing that this was the room I was going to be a part of, and I didn't know what it would look like. But man, for the last like 2 or 3 years that I was working at Silvertrack, like I knew the next thing I was going to do was a SaaS Academy. I just couldn't think of or get excited about anything else. I mean, think about, on one hand, I was like, oh my gosh, I just did the thing that so many of these founders do. I should go start a SaaS company. Right. And like, but nothing got me excited about, like, I don't know. I just like, there was a knowing that this was the next path for me. And so on one hand, yeah, it was flattering. In fact, if there's a podcast we did, the SaaS Academy podcast, we did one with Dan. Both Matt Verlack and I, the COO and the CRO, we had very similar stories. We were both clients of SaaS Academy, and both were a part of Dan's list of, hey, one day I'm going to work with this person, and every 2 months I'm just going to call them and check in on them. I don't know how I'm going to work with them. I don't know what it's going to look like, but this is someone we've got shared values, and I think we're going the same direction. And so I'm just going to nurture those relationships. So it's like kudos to Dan for like having, continuing to nurture that relationship, because it wouldn't have been any surprise to me for him to be like, hey, you're not a client anymore. Like, stays focused on his clients and who he's actively working with. But he kept on nurturing that relationship. So it was that paired with, to get the job, we do a test project. And so it's essentially like you're trying to simulate, for up to 10 hours, you're going to work on essentially what you're going to do when you take the job. So it's almost like a running start into onboarding. So they asked me, they gave me the top 3 challenges, and they were like, create a 90-day plan. And so I got for 10, I probably spent more than 10 hours on it, but I got to like really sink my teeth into this challenge. And when I presented it, their response and, my confidence in the solutions I put forward, it like made it feel a lot less scary than if I hadn't got a chance to work on it ahead of time. You know what I mean? Like I was like, dude, I already know the playbook now. And now I understand what I'm getting. Again, like I got all the company financials. Like I knew all the scorecard KPIs and how the business was performing. Like I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. There would have been a lot more anxiety if it was just the phone calls with Dan. And I don't know, like, is the business performing well? We're fresh off of COVID. Bunch of companies laid clients off. Like I was leaving, mid 6 figures in stock options on the table. Like I left what could have, and what has now since that time has turned into like, millions of dollars on the table. I left it on the table. So like it was a big decision to go, leave that. But like there were so many components of that recruiting process that just made me feel confident that this was the right next move. 1, it was a problem I wanted to solve. 2, I knew exactly what the business looked like and what my role in it would be. I was confident in my ability to contribute. And, yeah, I was also confident. Like Dan he's got a strong growth game. Like they say, guy is different every 12 months. So I'm like, there's this saying that as a founder, your vision has to be big enough for your team's vision to fit inside of it. And I'm like, Dan's vision is pretty big. So, my vision fit quite nicely right inside what he's trying to build at SaaS Academy.
I love that. A lot of philosophies, one of the biggest processes we ever built, at least before SaaS Academy, was hiring. We just believe if you don't have the right people, you don't have a company. And not just the right people, but just your one right person away from changing everything for everybody. And so we also do a test project as part of the hiring process, which, I later was kind of shocked to learn this is not the typical. But I love what you just said, because I'd always viewed it from the let's de-risk it from both sides in terms of, because people that interviewed all along the way had all this experience. When you're down to the last few candidates, they all looked similar. And then you give the test project and there's no more similarities. They just show up differently. And so I viewed it as de-risking it for both sides, because I don't want to hire the wrong person, certainly, but also they don't want to join and then, leave a month or 2 in. Neither of us wants that.
Yeah.
So I viewed it from that angle, but I love where you just said, right? What I hadn't considered is you had the clarity about the business. You had the confidence to understand it, because they were willing to be transparent about where they were, all the way down to financials and KPIs. And also, like, I think most people look at hiring as more or less a one-way street, where the power is in the company or the hirer's side. So I love that they gave you all of that and, basically the problems, the three problems, right? Whatever,
Yeah.
whatever what they thought their issues were, which are opportunities or problems, depending on which side of the coin. Right. And so I
Yeah.
love that they gave you that, because now there's not a surprise when you walk
Yeah.
into it. You know what you're getting into. You can make that decision with both eyes open,
Yeah.
or not,
Yeah.
especially because that's what I love. How do I walk away from millions in stock options? Right. That could be, that's a loaded question right there. Right.
Yeah.
So I just hadn't seen the other side of the, I knew that people got more excited, and as they dug into our company and our culture, doing the project got them more excited. But I love the whole, gosh, I have confidence. I
Yeah.
have more understanding. I have all these things.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important. I'll tell you a cool thing that we've developed when we do our test projects now is we'll typically have more than one person on to review the test project. So the way the test project works is we give them a prompt. It's typically three prompts. They get up to 10 hours to work on it. They submit their file ahead of time, and then we bring them on live to say, hey, this is like math class. I got your answers, but now I want you to show your work. Tell me, your thought process behind this. I'm gonna give you the mic for 30 minutes. You walk through each one. We'll save all of our questions. And I'll typically have like 3 to 5 people on reviewing. I want to have a couple of their peers. So who are they going to work with? Their direct manager for sure. Typically if it's a senior leader, CEO and executive leadership team are there. So I want to have a good panel there to review the test project. And then when I say at the beginning of the hour, we'll block off an hour for this. I tell the candidate, hey, the last 10 minutes is reserved for us as a team to debrief. So don't be surprised when we end early. It's by design. We'll go 50 minutes. And then what we do is as soon as the candidate jumps off the call, I say, all right, no discussions. I want everyone to open up your chat window in Zoom, and you're going to type in a number from 1 to 10 on their fit for this role. And you can't choose number 7. 7's a cop out. It's like middle of the road. I either want you like north of 7, south of 7. Everyone's going to type it in, and then I'm going to count to 3, and we're all going to hit enter. And so then you get to see everyone, because sometimes the loudest voice in the room, the hiring manager might say, oh, they're a 9, and then everyone else thinks they're a 9 and a great fit. So it gets everyone's like true sense of this person's fit. And it's so exciting when you get everyone going like 9s and 10s. You're like, heck yeah, we got our person. And then you might find you have some range. And then now we say, oh, we've now found that we have different values in who, what is important in this role. And so, yeah, it's just the test project is such an important, if hiring is your opportunity to step the business, significantly forward, engineering this opportunity to, the team is basically hiring and receiving this person into the organization. They know they've had a chance to earn it. Like no other role is making you earn this position like we are. So their level of commitment and excitement and belief that they're the right person for the role on day one. Yeah, I can't say enough about it. If you're not doing a test project, you got to be doing it, because it's so rewarding for the candidate and for your team to go through that process that, day one, you fast tracked all of that way earlier on. And the risk of you making a bad hire and having done all that stuff is like, really, really low.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you, Johnny. There are folks that I feel like I've talked to about this, and they kind of get it for like a management C-level hire, but I feel like then at the same time they go back and say, well, for example, as an MSP, I need more engineers. I land a more deal, I got to have another engineer, and like they care, but it's also just like when I land the deal, I need an engineer or something like that, or for every 2 deals or 3 deals, I need another engineer. So there's more common ones where it's yet another person, and they're not necessarily the leading the company. My belief is that they still are impacting the culture of the company, the clients,
Totally.
and changing your world. So, what would you say to folks, just that are like, I don't know if I should do a project, because it's feels different when it's like, here's all our problems, present how you're going to come on and solve those in 90 days versus still very important hire, but at the direct line level.
Yeah. We do it for everyone. Like I don't want anyone taking the job thinking that it's just a job. So if you hire like everyone else, they're going to assume you're like everyone else. Like from their application, we have them submit a 1-minute video. Like, so you create a Loom video, pull up your phone, and answer 3 questions. So like from the very beginning of our process, we're sending the signal that we are not like the others. If you're just looking for a one-click apply and you're looking for a job, you got to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to believe that the company is the sum of the people.
Yes.
So your engineering team, imagine you have your best person. If you could clone them 10 times, if everyone on your engineering team showed up like that person did, how much different would the business be?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Or the best engineer you've ever talked to. So if you realize this is for probably a lot of the MSPs that are listening, they still think they're playing the game of being a great technician.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are the founder and you want to grow, like, no, you're building a company. And so people is like such an important part of this process. So if you need, and security was the same way, where as soon as you landed the deal, it's like, which one comes first, my supply or the demand?
Mm-hmm.
And there was always this like back and forth of, oh no, we landed this huge contract. We need guards on site in 20 days. We have to go hiring. So sometimes it's like, we're just going to take the warm body. Like,
That's right.
just got it. We got to have someone to start that day. So I would start saying, engineering, the earning potential of an engineer is, certainly more than that of a security officer. I would say, hey, this warrants us having a talent pipeline. I need to know every single engineer in this city. I need to know the best of the best, and I need to be nurturing a relationship with them. Because if I could do that, like, almost every other problem goes away. Like, think about the number of problems you're solving in your daily business right now, and how many of them would be gone if my engineering team was the best in the city.
Right.
It's probably a lot of them. So, it's worth me taking the time. That goes back to that Infusionsoft example of like, am I going and hunting and killing the one for today? Or am I building the fence that allows me to bring them in? Like, I want to be known, if I'm an MSP, I want to be known as the best place to work. Because if I'm in the best place to work, my client satisfaction is going to be through the roof.
Right.
I got to attract the best of the best talent and think about what are all of the things that deliver value for an engineer. Comp is not the only one. I promise you, we're humans. It is not the only one. They like working with people that are like them. There's, I could go on to this for days, but I'll pause. I'll come up for air there. I think it's super important, man. I wouldn't, if you have a limiting belief right now around, oh, that doesn't apply to me because of X, you're limiting the potential of your business.
Yeah. I think the last part really drove the nail home, I think. And I love that because so many MSPs I talk to, they, I wouldn't say that they're not trying to hire well, but what I would say is they're like, we're actually the best. Now, it's hard to communicate that to the client, but we are the best. And whether they are, they still believe it. And we have a great team. That's usually what they cite. And so, and then I think part of what's easy in this industry is, sure, you can lose a client, but like, it's really painful for a client to leave an MSP. So churn isn't very high. And so I think you can get complacent and sit there and go, wow, we're the best because we don't have much churn. And for example, our client, we have some raving clients, and the other ones, they don't really say anything. And but no matter how good the customer base is, even if it's way better than that, well, I guess my point is they haven't connected that the people are the thing that drives that client satisfaction. And so if I'm going to be the best at delivery, which is pretty much the universal goal, then I need to be the best at employing and keeping and growing people.
Yeah. It's probably the best sales and growth strategy. And this is what it was in the security space. It's like, no one wakes up and says, hey, I think I want to change my MSP. Like, it's produced by pain. And so think about when they have pain, you're either in the right place at the right time. So you made a great sales call, or you made an email, but that's leaving a lot up to chance. Yes. So the other option is they're going to call who else they know and they say, hey, who are you using? And so I would say, if you have 10 customers, you have all that you need to have unlimited growth. We just have to figure out what do I need to do for those 10 customers to make sure that every single one of them turns into another customer. One client turns into another. And then again, and then it's like, I'll have everything I need. I think, either you're going to exchange a ton of your hours because, and you as a founder, it's how you get to the first 10. It's like you
Yes.
are that energy, and at some point you have to do that through other people. And the only way that you can do that is to make sure that you're hiring people in that allow you to, that are able to produce the same results, the same level of care for your clients. And if you can do that, I think that's how you're playing the longevity game. It's not going to be this like hockey stick growth, but if you just do that, 1 year after year, after 5 years in, 10 years in, you have this like discipline on who we hire is essentially our sales strategy. So like we put a ton of effort into getting the best of the best talent, improving their skill set, making sure they have opportunities to grow. Like all of those, again, it's not just compensation. It's like, in fact, we never are the top paying job ever. We're never the top paying opportunity. And I want it to be that way. Like I want the person valuing the other parts of what we bring. And so I think if you shift into that mindset as an MSP that like all I need is 10 clients to have unlimited growth. If I showed up and I took care of these clients as if they were going to turn into another one, like what would have to be true for this one client to turn into another? How do I grow through referrals and word of mouth? It's all, you're going to find that a lot of that leads back to the team you're hiring.
I love that. Yeah. Everybody knows, most of the folks I've talked to, they got to 10. They hustled, they grinded, they got there, they put all the hours in. And the truth is it's mostly referrals. But, I think we somewhere in running around and build a business, we forget. We need, what I call raving fans. We don't just need clients. We need raving fans that just love what we do, that would laugh if a competitor called and that would love to refer us. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, again and again. And I love how you tied that to that's your team. That's your people.
Yeah. I mean, you could think there's 2 great opportunities as an MSP. Let's just say that it's been like 6, 12 months before there's been any issues at a client site. I want an alert that comes up that says, hey, you probably forgot about us.
That's right.
Guess what? For most MSPs, that's a really good thing. Like you never had something break. So would you mind, is there one person that that you could just share like the work that we've done? Someone else, I'm like, would you mind just passing that along and say, hey, you write a really cute, witty email that says, hey, you probably forgot about us. And that's a good thing, right? And just make the request. Can you share this to one other person? The other is something breaks. And when something goes wrong, scar tissue heals stronger than the original stuff. And so we show up, we don't only just meet expectations, but we exceed them. And on the other end of that is like, hey, I've worked with lots of MSPs and most people would have just done X. Thank you guys for going the extra mile and doing, Y. Use it as an opportunity to like really instill confidence in that client. You created another bright spot in their client journey. And then you make the ask to go to somewhere else. Like, you can't do that at scale if you don't have a great team. And I think I'm a customer success led growth guy through and through. Like it's how I think about things at Silvertrack. That's why, for so much of my time was focused first on how do I deliver on the customer success side, because I knew I could scale from there. That's what I do at SaaS Academy. It's like, it doesn't do us any good to go out and find more clients if we can't win for the ones we got. Like we got to make this an absolute 10 out of 10 for the clients we have. And if I turned off all our ads, I turned off all our content marketing, if I just had the customer that I had today and that was the only way I could grow, how does that guide how we, hire, how we invest in our product, invest in our clients? I think you can get a really long way with just that. So you don't have to go to those networking events.
Right. Now you're speaking that language, right?
Yeah.
I love that because, I think, at least I'll speak personally, customer success in a lot of companies, I felt like was just the new name for account management, which in a lot of companies, unfortunately, is just try not to lose the account, right? Just try to keep them happy enough that they won't churn. And that was essentially more or less, like they didn't say those words, but it seemed like that was the outcome they were looking for, which, my point is when you say customer success, now I'm fired up. I'm like, yes, what you said, we all need to do that. But in a lot of things, when you say customer success, it's just like, because personality type is like yours, pioneer. I want to help them do things. I want to help them innovate. I want to help them be better than they were.
Yeah.
And, the bad versions of customer success is just try to hang on, just try to, send same emails, talk to them once a quarter. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're okay. Fine. Bye.
Yeah.
What does that do for anybody? I can't
Yeah.
imagine that gets you excited. It doesn't help them.
No, it's most agencies. I know we put like, any type of outsourced work. When I say agency, I'm talking about any type of, core function that you've outsourced. Most agencies have that exact model. Our margins are improved the closer we are to the cancellation line. I mean, we've invested the least amount of resources, the least amount of time, but we're staying above the line where the standard is too low, where the client's going to cancel us. We stay right there.
Mm.
So, and that's the standard, and that's what's expected. Like the client knows that. And so what happens if you flip it on its head and say, what's the most amount of value we can deliver while still keeping our margins intact? Like, is there an opportunity for me to, hey, I noticed an opportunity to like save you guys some cash or be more efficient in this area, or, get twice as much for half the time or half the investment. It's like, that would be such a pattern interruption to your client and create that word of mouth that you need to grow. So yeah, customer success as a growth strategy, I think you can't outrun it. Like you may not have to fully embrace it. You could be great at sales and great at marketing and you'd be great to get them in the door. But, to create that truly, create longevity and a truly exceptional client experience, I think you got to wake up and obsess about it every day and make sure you hire a team that does the same.
Yeah. I love that. So I could spend the whole rest of the day with you, Johnny, if our calendars permitted. This is awesome. I want to end on that nugget, right? Which is if you can help and flip that and change your mindset and flip it upside down and say, what's the most value we could possibly deliver, instead of how do we just keep them above the cancellation line? That's a paradigm shift, and you will be unlike any other MSP in your market. Because I do business with enough of them to know, like, they're not bad guys, but it's that thinking you said, it kind of tends to creep in. And so that's a beautiful gift. Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah, of course, man.
How can people connect with you, reach out to you, follow you, listen to you on your podcast?
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
Yeah, a couple spots. So if you want to listen to podcasts, it's SaaS Academy podcast. You can find it wherever podcasts are at. My Instagram is JohnnyPage13. That is a great spot. I share a lot of like what it's like to be building a business. Run a pretty sizable company that's committed to sharing what makes us work. Like, part of our core values are we hire and do the best out of anyone in the world, and then we share that with our clients. Like, we share how we do what we do. So I share a lot of like how I build the company and run our revenue operation there. So yeah, man, those are the two. In the website, saasacademy.com, there's tons of free resources and stuff there that apply whether you're a SaaS company or not. Tons of stuff. We're on YouTube. So yeah, Damien, thank you so much for having me on, man. This was fun. Like, it's fun to get to call this work. This is what it's like when you find your right seat, right spot. You get to do stuff like this every day. So appreciate the opportunity to come on and jam.
Yeah, this is a blessing, guys. So Johnny Page, don't miss the opportunity to get connected. I love the fact that you've got this podcast, you're talking about real world. I also love that you're sharing, and it's a core value on Instagram about how you're building, how you're doing this, right? Because it's not always easy, and you want to understand where it is, and most of us aren't where your SaaS Academy is yet, and to know what that next level or 2 levels or whatever ahead is super helpful. So make sure to connect with Johnny.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Damien.
Yeah.